I'm here with Road Safety Officer Neil Ellison. Hi Neil, thanks for talking to us. Now I don't know a great deal about bikes, but let's talk safety checks first. What's the most important thing to check?
There are a number of simple things that we need to check. There'll be brakes, there'll be tyres, there'll be lights, there'll be the frame, there'll be the wheels, and there'll be the chain and gears.
This might sound like a really dumb question, but why do you need to check your brakes?
You need to check your brakes on a regular basis, ideally every time you go out, because you might have the best bike in the world, you may be a really competent rider, but if your brakes fail at a critical moment, like if there's an emergency or if you're going down a steep downhill, then you really want them to be working.
Yeah, and what's the best way to check them?
It's very, very simple. On a daily basis, all you got to do is to make sure that the levers operate smoothly, you can feel that the brakes are firm, and that it stops the wheel securely. And you find the back end of the bike comes off the ground, and when you wheel it backwards for the rear brake, is that you can actually stop the bike completely. Another thing you've got to check as well is to make sure that it's adjusted properly so that the handlebar lever doesn't come all the way back to the handlebar. Otherwise your brakes aren't working properly at all then.
Yeah, and then you're in big trouble.
Then you're in big trouble. In addition, every so often you'll need to check your brake pads or brake blocks for wear. All you need to do is to look down, you can see the wear indicators on them. If they need replacing, get it done as quick as you can because it's really important for the efficiency of the brakes.
Quite often when I get on a bike, the chain or the gear will slip out of line. Why does that happen?
It'll just be a case of bad adjustment. With a bit of wear and tear, the gears go out of adjustment. They're usually adjusted in one of two ways. First of all, in the cable, which affects the gear changing mechanism. And sometimes you have stops here that prevent the chain from slipping off the chain wheel or the cogs at the back.
Right. What's the best way to keep the chain nice and clean?
You can use a chain lubricant. It's important to clean them on a regular basis, but when you've done that, you must lubricate them. But for the best lubrication, you really need a specialist cycle spray, Teflon based, or even something as simple as 3-in-1 oil.
Right.
But I would suggest at least once a week you need to be checking your chain.
How do you know when you've got a flat tyre?
If it's completely flat, it's fairly obvious, you'll see it. If it's going soft or going down, then you'll notice it as you're rising it because it gets very, very hard work.
Right, and is it dangerous to ride with a flat tyre?
It can be, particularly if you're going around a bend and at speed, yes.
Right, and what kind of things can cause a tyre to go flat?
You get a lot of thorns, hawthorns getting your tyres, glass, nails. The best thing to do is to keep your tyres pumped up really hard according to the mark on the side of the tyre. That will tend to keep thorns and things out of the tyre.
Right, and is that the only way you can prevent a flat tyre?
The best thing is to check your tyres regularly, looking for anything which is actually stuck in the tread and make sure you remove that. And the main thing is to keep the tyres pumped up hard.
Right, okay. What about pressures for tyres?
Use the pressures which are actually written on the side of the tyre and keep it as close to the highest pressure as you can. That'll keep things out. Okay,
so check your tyre pressures and make sure that your bike is safe and the tyres are nice and firm. How do you know when a tyre is ready to replace?
It's usually fairly obvious when you've got bald patches, splits, cracks. You can see some of the carcass of the tyre coming apart. And also when the tread's well down as well. You get a lot of punctures when the tyre's close to the end of its life.
What's the minimum tread life then? What's the the requirements?
It depends on the tyre. Some are fairly smooth anyway, some have a lot of tread. You'll see fairly quickly when the tyre's when it's got bald patches on it.
Right, okay, thanks Neil.
Frames are usually fairly maintenance free, but alloy frames sometimes can crack, and it's important every so often to check, particularly at the joints here. You don't want the bike to fail when you're actually riding.
No.
Steel frames tend to be prone to rust, particularly if you get a lot of dirt thrown off the tyre. So it's important to make sure that the frame is cleaned, and if you do get any rust spots, get them covered over with some extra paint. Otherwise they will rust and they can crack.
Do you still get many steel frames now, do you?
We're starting to see more steel frames coming back now because steel rides a little differently from alloy, but the majority of bikes that you'll see these days use alloy frames now.
Right, okay. And what would you check for?
You just look at the frame joints to see if there's any cracks in here, particularly in here, and at all the major joints. If you see anything there, get it to a bike dealer, don't use it.
Right, okay, thanks. What about legal requirements?
Yep, the bike must have a red rear reflector and a